You know, when you look back at the American Civil War, there are these moments, these single days, that didn't just cause incredible bloodshed, they changed the entire course of history. We're about to walk through one of those days right now. The date was September 17th, 1862. The place? A little creek in Maryland called Antietam. Now, what's so wild about this is that we're not talking about a week-long siege or some drawn-out campaign. All the carnage we're about to discuss happened in one single brutal day. All right, let's just let this sink in for a second. This number right here, 22,727, that's what that number represents, the total count of men who were killed, wounded, or just went missing in a single day's fighting. It's still the bloodiest day in American history, period. So the question is, how on earth did this happen? And maybe more importantly, how did a battle that was essentially a horrific tie end up being a massive turning point for the whole country? Well, to get to the bottom of that, we have to start with a huge, high-stakes gamble taken by Confederate General Robert E. Lee. He decided to invade the North. And this whole thing really comes down to the two men in charge. On one hand, you've got Robert E. Lee. He's riding high on a string of big wins, and he decides, you know what? It's time to take the fight to them, onto Union soil. And then on the other side, you've got the Union's George McClellan, a guy who was fantastic at organizing an army, but, and this is a big but, he was famously, maybe even fatally, cautious. And just look at the numbers here. I mean, this really tells the story. The Union Army had way more men, about 87,000 to Lee's 55,000. So you'd think, looking at this, it's a slam dunk for the Union, right? But as we know, wars aren't won on paper. And this is where the story takes this crazy, almost unbelievable twist, a moment that really should have just ended the war right then and there. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. A couple of Union soldiers are just milling around a campsite the Confederates had just left. They find a little package on the ground. They open it up, and inside, wrapped around 3 cigars, is a full copy of Lee's secret plans, Special Order 191. It laid out exactly where all of Lee's scattered forces were. It was an intelligence jackpot. But here's the kicker. General McClellan gets this gift from the gods of war, a literal roadmap to destroying his enemy. And he waits. For 18 agonizing hours, he hesitates. And that delay was just enough time for Lee to figure out his plans had been compromised and to start pulling his army back together. The golden opportunity was just gone. And that fateful delay, that hesitation, sets the stage for the battle itself. It was this chaotic, sprawling mess that's probably best understood as a really brutal 3-act play. So it basically breaks down into 3 phases. It starts with just absolute carnage in the morning up north. Then it shifts to the center of the battlefield, which collapses around midday, and it all wraps up with a desperate final push in the south late in the afternoon. So let's jump into Act 1. It all kicks off at the crack of dawn. Union forces under General Joseph Hooker just slam into the Confederate left flank, right here, in a field that would go down in history as Miller's Cornfield. And the fighting, it was just beyond brutal. To give you a sense of it, General Hooker himself later said, every stalk of corn was cut as closely as could have been done with a knife, just shredded by gunfire. Think about that. This one patch of ground was taken and retaken at least 15 times. One officer just called it artillery hell. And by noon, we're not even halfway through the day, there were already almost 13,000 casualties. Okay, so with the northern part of the line just a horrifying stalemate, the whole focus of the battle shifts to the center. This right here, this is what it looks like today. Just a quiet, sunken farm road. But on that day, it was basically a perfect natural trench. And the Confederate defenders in it were mowing down wave after wave of Union attacks. For hours, it seemed unbreakable. But then, Union troops finally found a way to get on their flank so they could fire right down the length of the road. It turned from a fortress into a death trap. And that's how it got its horrible, unforgettable name, Bloody Lane. And at that point, the Confederate center just broke. It completely collapsed. A Union sergeant put it bluntly, saying, after they flanked them, we were shooting them like sheep in a pen. For the second time that day, it looked like the battle was over. You'd think that was it, right? Game over for Lee's army. But the battle wasn't done yet. The fight moved into its final, nail-biting act.
The last big push happened down south, at this stone bridge, now called Burnside's Bridge. The Union finally fought their way across, and they were this close to crushing Lee's entire army when, out of nowhere, Confederate General A.P. Hill's division shows up. They had literally been force marching all day to get there. They crashed into the Union attack, stopped it cold, and saved Lee's army from being wiped out.
And just like that, as the sun set, the shooting died down. The fighting was over. But its real impact, its true consequences, well, that was just getting started.
So here's the thing that's kind of tricky to wrap your head around. Tactically, on the field itself, you could call it a draw, but strategically, it was a huge win for the Union. And why is that? Because Lee's army was so battered that he had no choice but to retreat back into Virginia.
And this is where everything really pivots. Look at the ripple effect. Lee's invasion was stopped flat. President Lincoln, totally fed up, finally fired McClellan. But the big one, the real game changer, was that this victory gave Lincoln the political strength he needed to issue the Emancipation Proclamation. That act reframed the entire war as a fight to end slavery, which completely destroyed any chance the Confederacy had of getting help from anti-slavery countries in Europe like Britain and France.
So in the end, you get this incredible paradox. A day of absolute horror that ended in a tactical tie became one of the most decisive and important battles in American history. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What if that one bloody day, a day that turned on a lost piece of paper and a last-second arrival, had gone just a little bit differently?